and this is Mindset Monday on Blue Health, the Facebook page anyway. As we all know, Mindset Monday is something we started about a little over a month ago, going on about 2 months now, where we meet every Monday night with different guests, and we focus on those mindset things, those things that drive us throughout the week that influence us to be better by Friday. And this really is a project that we've got ongoing, where we want to reach out and have these conversations with a wide array of people, focusing on a wide array of projects and doing a wide array of different things. Well, tonight, I'm super excited about this. We have some longtime friends of Blue Health with us this evening. Jeff and Shawn Thomas from First Responder Conferences. They have been incredible supporters of the work we're doing here at Blue Health, and we hope that we've been equally supportive of them, and they've gotten as much out of this relationship as we have, because we truly love them and the work they're doing. So without any further ado, I'm going to actually turn it over to Shawn and Jeff to share with us a little bit about Blue Health. I'll tell you about Blue Health. You tell us about First Responder Conferences. A little bit about First Responder Conferences and your story. How did you get to where you're at? And tell us a little bit about it.
So obviously I'm Shawn Thomas, and going back to 2000, actually let's go back to 1997 when I was hired with the King County Sheriff's Office in Seattle, Washington. My dad was a law enforcement officer for 30 years. And so that's kind of what took me, I followed his footsteps and got me into this profession. And then my husband, Jeff, just retired 32 years. And so I've just been around first responders my whole life. And it was just a way of life for me. So that's why I got into the police profession. And let's see, in 2006, I became a member of our peer support team. That's when I started responding to all the critical incidents that our officers were involved with, and helping them and their families process through those events. I just was really passionate about that. I loved helping, and that just kind of gave me an idea of, when I got into this job, obviously I wanted to help the community and help people, but I didn't realize how many first responders, our officers were struggling with day-to-day events. So fast forward to 2015, Jeff had been on the SWAT team for about 18 years and was undergoing a lot of organizational stress, and started to cope with alcohol. He got to the point where he realized that he needed some assistance, and I was like, great, now what? What do we do? I just, at that time, didn't feel like we should talk to our department. So we found a confidential resource, and we got Jeff the help that he needed. After that happened, we both looked at each other and thought, if we're both first responders and we don't know where to get help, there's got to be several other first responders out there. So my focus at that point was to help families, because I knew that we weren't the only family that had endured something like that. Then my peer support captain suggested that we have a first responder mental health and wellness conference. And I thought, sure, what a great idea. Like, how hard can a conference be, right? And then I realized, wow, there's a lot that goes into putting a conference together. But I think we had around 150 people that attended, and at least 5 people reached out for help. So it was clear to me that there was a lot of first responders that were suffering in silence, and that we needed to do something to help provide education and resources for those people to endure this long, tough profession and get the help that they need. So after that conference, people from out of state started asking me, hey, can you put one of these conferences on? We really like what you're doing. And I said, sure, my plate's not full enough, so bring it on. And we just kept on moving forward. And every time we went somewhere, people reached out for help. And it got to the point where people would say, hey, if it wasn't for this conference, my kids wouldn't have a mom. Or, just a lot of comments that were coming back to us. And, people were saying that it was the best training that they had, like in 13 years or 14 years. And so it just kept us moving forward because we knew that we were helping people. And I don't feel like a lot of departments have like wellness units. Some don't even have peer support units. And so I felt like if the departments weren't going to do a lot or enough to help with this profession or the first responder profession, that we need to do something. And so we kept on moving forward. And now we've done 20 conferences since 2016. And just, every time we go somewhere, people are grateful and glad that we put these conferences on. And so we just keep on moving forward.
Awesome. And I mean, there was so much wrapped into everything you just said. So what I'd like to do is, audience, you are more than welcome, and everybody watching already knows this, but if you're just joining us, two favors I have to ask of the audience. First of all, ask questions. Jeff and Shawn are open books. They're going to tell us tonight about how they got where they're at, just an in-depth conversation tonight. You know how we do it here. But in addition to that, share this, because this is a story and a message that needs to be shared and needs to be told. So with that, I want to turn this over to you guys. In fact, I can tell you right now, you're getting comments already from folks about the awesome work you do. And so thank you very much for what you've done so far. And in this, a couple of things I know we're going to circle back around to is that moment of realization, Jeff, when you realized you needed to reach out to a confidential resource. I want to have that conversation with you at some point this evening. What was that like, the realization piece, and then the courage and strength it took to actually reach out to them? And if you don't mind sharing, who was that confidential resource, or what type of confidential resource? Because there's so many out there. If you can give some guidance on how to reach out, we'd appreciate that. I also want to circle back around to the where are you at right now? How is First Responder Conferences doing, and where are you going to go? But if you don't mind, Jeff, I'd like to start off with that one with you. When you hit that point, what was that like? Kind of talk us through that, because that was the catalyst for all this.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit of the first responder guinea pig. I was lucky in that I didn't really, I don't want to say suffer, but I compared to some other people's problems, mine was pretty minor. But I did get to a point where I just didn't feel good, and I needed to do something for my own health, per se. I was lucky, you hear these horror stories about people who have issues. Luckily, I didn't get to that point. But as far as reaching out, like Shawn said, we were a little bit in the dark about who to reach out to. And we were leery because it was early in this whole health and wellness process that we were a little bit leery about reaching out to our own department. So we were lucky enough to find somebody that helped us out. And it was pretty simple. And luckily, it can be a lot more complicated for some people who don't have the right resources or the right, our department has good insurance and things like that. So you get into that those issues you have to analyze before you figure out what you're going to do. As far as the decision to do it was terrific for me. I mean, there's nothing bad I can say about it. It was educational. After being in law enforcement for so long and kind of having a grip on it for so long, just the fact that I kind of backed off from the job and had a little break from it was absolutely beneficial. Change of scenery was absolutely beneficial. So like we were talking about before, I was on the SWAT team for 18 years. I was married to a pager 24 hours a day. It was all cop stuff 24 hours a day for a long time. And things don't always go your way, and you don't get exactly what you want, and you don't, you have these personal sufferings that maybe you don't need to do. Maybe some people don't, and some people do. So, and you turn to coping mechanisms that aren't healthy all the time. So when you do, it's just nice to have some place to turn. And that's kind of what we're trying to provide as far as first responder conferences go.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing the candor in that. And it's already generated one question from Chris Thorpe, another friend of Blue Help. And I think,
Hi, Chris.
yeah, exactly. I think he said hi up there. He also asked a question that I'm going to let the audience play with before I ask you guys. But he asked about hurdles and what for you, you kind of wrapped a little bit of it up in there as far as what were some of the challenges you faced and what might people face. But what was it, in your opinion, that allowed you to push past that, regardless of all of the barriers to getting to that point and asking for help? What was it that allowed you to push past all that?
Well, on a personal level, luckily for me, I have the tools or whatever to where I was worried about myself and my family before I was worried about anything else. And I know some people really can't do that. I mean, different states have different rules and, labor stuff and all that kind of stuff. And I know there's a lot of things to think about when you go to make a decision like that. I don't want to say that I didn't care, but I didn't really care. I wanted to do what was best for me, and that's a personal choice, and you really can't instruct anybody on that. If I could make a point about it, when I first started, nobody said a word about this kind of stuff because we weren't supposed to.
Right.
And the stigma's kind of being lifted, and I wasn't trying to prove a point in any sort of way. I just got sick and tired of being sick and tired. The same old thing that pretty much every addiction has, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I just knew I needed to make some changes, and luckily it was easy. And I have to say that part of the reason it was easy is because we have good insurance, and I had a lot of time under my belt. I had a lot of time to play with. It's not that same way for everybody who has an issue. But if you're going to help people, if you're going to be in the service business, you got to take care of yourself first. So if there's an issue, address it early, because the only place to go is up from there, and you have to address it. You can't ignore it. You need to address it. So
absolutely. No, I heard in that 3 big takeaways for me, and I'll let the audience kind of weigh in on it as well. But number 1 was being willing to put yourself first, and that is a tough wrestling match to have with ourselves sometimes, but committing to it early enough and being strong enough in that conviction, phenomenal. The other big one I heard in there, you mentioned it a couple times now, is insurance. On this show, we often talk about the leader's role and the agency's role in making these things happen. And that's a big piece of this. When we talk wellness, we kind of have to talk a little bit more holistically about it and make sure that those programs and policies are in place. And then the other one, you just kind of really drill down into it, is it takes courage, but that takes time and practice and conviction for it. So I know we're going to circle back around to a couple of questions for you, and where you're at now and that kind of stuff. But Shawn, kind of talk us through a little bit about how First Responder Conferences is at this point doing, and where are you going to go now? COVID had to have had an impact on you guys. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. Well, obviously, we were set to have a conference in Arizona 2 weeks before this whole thing happened. So we were pretty much forced to postpone and reschedule conferences. And I'm going to tell you, that's really difficult. It's hard to plan an event right now. And we just want to move forward, and we want to get out there. And the feeling that we get at these conferences, and the feeling that everybody in the room and networking and connecting is, I can't even explain to you what that feels like. I'm sure you probably already know, but so we really want to get back there. Obviously that's not happening as fast as we had hoped. So we are now trying to do webinars weekly. And you and I had spoke about that, and that's a whole another learning process for me. And I mean, it's hard too, working full time, right? Like I work 4 10s, and so then I come home and then I work on this conference stuff and I try to get everything done. And then he's like, it's 10 o'clock where I haven't even seen you. And so there's a lot that goes on in trying to put, these, trying to find a date in the future for the conferences, and then also working on trying to get these webinars, just because, I'm not too enthused about doing a virtual conference. I feel like as a first responder, it's very hard for me to sit for an hour, let alone 2 days and listen to people speak. And so for us, we felt like our webinar presentations would be, I just felt like people would attend those more, get more out of them. It's more personal. They can chat with the speaker. And that's one of the parts that I really like about the conferences, is the connection with the speaker. Like I said, this one conference that we went to, which I thought was a complete failure, this gal said to me, she said, I reached out to the speaker, and if it wasn't for reaching out to the speaker and having that connections, my kids wouldn't have a mom. And so that is so important, to have that connection with the speakers. And so we're really trying to make them as personal as we can, and get that information, education, and resources out there.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it. I think because we see like HR conferences and those sorts of things happening on a regular basis, right? But when you and I talked, it was one of those, even in the back of my mind, you were saying it out loud, but I remember thinking, how do you get that? Because I've only been to one of your conferences, but in that one, I felt that. I felt that connection with your speakers. I felt the passion. I felt that their sincerity came through. And I wonder how you're going to do that, but I'm confident in having had that conversation with you that you're working very hard to make that intimate connection with people in these webinars. And that's something that's difficult to do, but I think you've got the right kind of plan moving forward with it, that we're going to find that. And I think, like anything, this is our new normal, right? We don't have a choice as to how we do this. We're going to have to figure out a way, and you leaning into it is the right direction to go. And I think, having had that conversation, the 1 hour approach to it is certainly going to be a benefit over, you've already got a "you're right" comment on here about that 8 hours. I cannot imagine, especially with the topics you cover, right? So speaking of that, one of the things that came up in here, and I'm kind of curious about, is your journey through these conferences. What have you noticed in yourselves and your own personal growth as a family unit and as professionals? What have you experienced after doing now 4 years of conferences?
So one of the things Jeff and I laugh about is we talk about compassion fatigue, and Jeff thought that was stupid. He was just like, "Oh, compassion fatigue. I'm so tired of these terms. I'm tired of people talking about this and that." And then, and so after, one of these conferences, I don't know who you were listening to, but he's like, "You know what? I think I have that." And so I think for me personally, attending these conferences and listening to the speakers, I have learned a lot as far as coping mechanisms. I've learned a lot about things that I didn't realize that were happening in my life that, maybe were a little broken, but I can fix them. And so it's just been such a huge learning process. I mean, if you were to talk to me about compassion fatigue or PTSD, like, when we first started, I'd be like, "What's that?" And now, I mean, I just have this clear picture, and the important thing is that, I want people to recognize the signs and symptoms, and that it is real. And I think a lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, that's not going to happen to me." But now looking back at all the things that I've endured throughout this career, I mean, you can't do this career for more than 5 years without some post-traumatic stress. So but I don't think that you know it until you've been there for a while. And so we have this conversation about providing this information in the academies, which I think is good, but your head is so full and you're learning so many things that when somebody talks to you about PTSD or post-traumatic stress, you're just like, oh, whatever, I'm young, and they haven't really endured anything. But year 5 comes around, and after you see the things that you can't unsee, it wears on you. And so I really, the thing I like about these conferences is people providing resources, because it's not a one size fits all, but you have to find what works for you. And if it's talking to a therapist, or yoga, or meditation, or whatever it is, you just have to find it. And I know I probably went on and on, but it's I can't explain enough how important it is to start learning about this stuff at a early age in your career, because it's going to catch up with you.
Absolutely. And I think, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you need to learn how to process.
Yes. And I'm going to try to wrap together a couple of questions here, and I may circle back around to clarify a few things, because we have a lot of different things. And first of all, everything you just said resonated with quite a few people here, obviously. But both Meredith and JP kind of phrased questions very similarly. Number one was the experience of, when I went to your conference, what I experienced was this authenticity and candor that you can't find anywhere else. But at the same time, people were telling some hard stories. And it's an incredibly emotional experience to go to one of your conferences. And so in there, the value of people telling their stories. And then that's compounded by another question we have here. Jeff, you mentioned that when we started in this, and I think you and I are kind of similar in the point, you hit that retirement point, which I'm looking forward to asking you some questions about that. If you don't, because we always get questions about that. By the way, everybody, Jeff just retired from a career in law enforcement. So get ready to ask your pre-retirement questions and what are you doing now type questions, because I'm certainly going to ask some. But you mentioned that it was, nobody even talked about it. It wasn't just difficult to talk about, but nobody talked about it. And if they did, it was an awkward conversation. It was taboo almost. And so you've seen the changes over time. But what role is that having? So those are the two questions, I think, is that candor you've built, right? You've got an organization that is wrapped around candorous conversations and people telling it's okay to ask for help. And Jeff, over time, you've seen this evolution happen. How do we encourage people across the profession to do that, to reach out for help? That's a lot in a question. Have fun with it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it has changed 180 degrees since I started, I would say. Everybody's different. Every human being's different. And some people are going to be candid with their issues, and some people are not going to be. Part of the things we try to talk about in our conferences are, to watch out for the people that maybe have look like they have an issue, or be inquisitive, and don't be that person who does nothing and then be sorry for it later, that sort of thing. There's all kinds of ways to approach that, I guess, which you can figure out your own ways, or you can just ask people. But it has changed considerably. I don't think the I would say the stigma's erased, but the walls have come down quite a bit. So I encourage anybody who has any sort of issue to talk to somebody. Talk to somebody. Don't hold it all in, because it's never going to work that way. And life is short, but there's lots of stuff out there. So if you need to make some changes, make them, because like I said, life is way too short to be miserable. And talk to somebody.
Awesome. And Shawn, you've been on the job for quite a few years yourself in active law enforcement. So between the two of you, what do you think the catalyst to change has been? Because we're all feeling the pulse on this. It's changing, but what's changing it? What is it that's happening?
That's a good question. I don't think I've ever really thought about that.
And by the way, folks, this is what I'm going to remind you that I don't give them these questions in advance. It's just a conversation. And so, yes, everybody gets ambushed at one point, but I'm curious. And, what do you think?
The whole world of law enforcement, and I can't speak for every first responder service there is out there, because I'm not a paramedic, and but I did work with people every day that were. The culture has changed quite a bit, obviously. People are different. There's just there's a different social media, and just the media itself has turned into this entertainment business, and everybody's got a cell phone in their hand, and there's if you thought there was a lot of pressure in 1988, there's a lot of pressure in 2020. You make one mistake and your career is over with, is what it kind of comes down to. And so, I mean, there's a lot of pressure out there, and things we used to liability wise never walk away from, now we do. And things that we used to say, this will die down and we don't have to worry about it, we spend weeks on. So as a law enforcement officer, because that's where I'm coming from, things are confusing. Our command staffs aren't backing us, our politicians aren't backing us. These people that are sworn to protect their own citizens are, we're kind of hung out to dry as law enforcement officers. So does that create stress? By God, it does. So has things changed completely? They have. And, along with COVID, I mean, we're talking about a service, business, that there's going to be a lot of people that are hurting if and when we get through this thing. So I guess what we're trying to do is do some preventative things, some awareness, some education, like we always try to do, just kind of keep people aware that, if you're feeling weird, and you need to, do something to help yourself. But things are different. They're way different than when I started. I mean, it's been quite an education to try to change with the times. There's so many thousands of things that have changed just with the virus. So it's quite a quickly changing, fluid deal that a lot of people are under a lot of strain. So absolutely. I don't know if that made any sense at all.
I think, some of it, right, is when we first started doing these conferences, I just didn't feel like there was really any proactivity as far as, mental health and wellness went. And so, our department's big enough where we have a peer support team, but that's all we really had. And we didn't, people knew about EAP, but EAP never really got out there and explained who they are and what they do. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, that's the county. Like, we're not going to talk to EAP because we think that's part of the county. Well, it is, but it isn't. So I think that there's more education and more programs becoming available to people. And, it's just that, like Mark says, it's okay to not be okay, and so I just think that things are taking a turn in the right direction, a little bit slower than they probably should have, but you can't close your eyes to it, and the departments are realizing that you can't do it and they have to do something about it. So I just think that there's more resources available to first responders now, and we talk about them more. When we first started doing these conferences on the West Coast, it was super open. On the East Coast, we found out it was like voodoo, just like you said earlier. So, but I think that there's a lot more support. And if you rise up, through the ranks, you've done this job and you realize that the things that you've went through and what people are going through, and any good supervisor, would realize that, or leadership team would realize that, hey, I was there and I endured all this. And so I can't imagine what these people are going through now, because it's crazy out there. I've never in my 23 years have seen so much hate and discontent, and people worn down, and stress, and people every day saying, when are you going to leave? When are you going to leave? It's not, the question is, how much longer do you have? How much longer do you have? And nobody wants to stay. And it's just crazy. And we need to change that, because we need police officers. This whole defunding let's not even get into that, because I don't even understand that. But, we need to change and do something to keep people in this profession, because I don't know what the world's going to look like.
For instance, right? We're losing good talent day after day right now. And though some are at that latter end of their career where it makes sense, it's just time for retirement, right? But others, phenomenal rock stars, walking off the job with 13 years, right? Plenty of career left ahead of them, plenty of difference they can make. And this is what's happening. And so I think that is a whole other conversation to be had, and I think it's worth having. But while we're focusing on because remember, Mindset Monday is all about what we can do to be better by Friday. And so I know this video is landing on the ears of an officer or a spouse out there who is in their 13th year, or roundabout there, 6th year, with a career ahead of them, wondering if this is for me. And so I think one of the things, there's so many comments coming in right now, folks. I want to do better at keeping up with these. But if you've ever been where I'm at, as they're talking, it's so difficult to look down at questions, because I'm fascinated every time. But Meredith, I hope we answered your question. Go ahead.
I said you need an assistant.
I do, actually. I think one of these days I'm going to make her just come in here, just because normally what happens, Jill comes in here and she'll like stick stickers on the door. I'm like, no, just stay here. Just like read them to me. So anyway, yes, you're right, I do. Or a big text message that pops up here, answer this question. Because they're phenomenal questions that are coming in. So I'd like to ask that after this, I know you're active on Facebook. Please go in and just kind of check in on some of these, because first of all, you got a lot of love coming at you guys, because Richard Wistocki mentioned that a lot of people don't even begin to have conversations. And I'm butchering this, Richard, I apologize. You said it probably better than I did, but don't even begin to have the conversations until they go to your conferences. And so, because we don't necessarily know how until we see somebody else do it, right? This isn't happening in every department everywhere. And so when we see somebody with that courage to be authentic and genuine in the moment and say, I needed this, here's how I got it, that's phenomenal. And so that's one of the big things that I've seen kind of coming up here. Meredith, I hope we answered your question as well about what's changing. She mentioned in here, there's a little bit going on with a generational thing. I think a lot of times with millennials, and Meredith said it here, getting kind of a bad rap for some of the conversations they're willing to have. Maybe there's something happening generationally that we're seeing. And so we got plenty of time. What are your thoughts on that? Is that affecting things? Is that generationally? What are you seeing as far as that? Because this is a whole different time in history right now. So what are your thoughts?
I think you're right. Just like we were talking about before, when people go into the academy, they get some of this mental health and wellness stuff now. And I'm assuming, of course, I'm in the police business, so I can't say for any other professions, but I'm assuming that they're getting it too. So I think that helps, right? It helps open the door and let people know that, there's programs in place and there's resources in place. When I first started, there was none of that. Like I don't even know how long it took for me to find out about EAP or peer support team. So I think that those things are, getting placed in their laps at the beginning of their careers, which is good. And I think that, you have some older folks in the department that are more, mentoring these younger kids. And I think that's important to have a mentoring program also. So I totally agree on as far as I think that they're more open to it because it's a more accepted now.
Yeah. And anything to add, Jeff, as far as your thoughts on it?
I was just going to say that, when I made the decision to get some help, I mean, maybe it was just a personal thing or whatever, but I didn't really even think about any ramifications of anything. And that was maybe just me. And I understand people who do. And like I said, that varies from department to department, state to state, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, there is maybe some thinking that goes into it in some respects, but then that's also a good reason to have resources available and people to talk to, because they can help you through if you're in a position where you need to make a decision whether to go to rehab or not, maybe it's not the greatest time for you to make your own decisions anyway. So, it's important you have somebody to talk to. When we made that decision, I didn't really even think about it in terms of any ramifications for employment. Like I said, and I'm probably lucky in that respect because I just was in a position where I didn't really need to, and I was covered. And part of that is just because in the department I worked for, we had good benefits, and so that's something that's important. But on the other hand, I don't think if somebody needs some help, I hate to say that they have to worry about benefits. So, in that respect, if somebody has an issue, I would still talk to somebody because there's lots of ways to get help with that kind, economic, financial, scholarship, whatever it is, to get the help you need if you need to go get some help.
Right.
So, I guess I'm not the best person to get pointers about as far as, because like I said, I'm kind of a free spirit, I guess, and whatever. I just decided it was time for me to do something, and I did it. And I didn't put a lot of thought into, I put a lot of thought into what's going to do to my family, but I knew it wasn't going to do anything to it. But I'm just lucky because I had the benefits to back me on that, I guess. So, but like I said, if there's any questions, just reach out to somebody, and somebody can direct you in the right direction to talk to the people you need to talk to, if in fact you need some sort of help. Because like I said, I mean, life is terrific. It can happen without law enforcement or firefighting or whatever else. I mean, there's lots of stuff out there in life to do. And, don't get me wrong, I love law enforcement, but it's not the only, game in town. So
Let's talk about that for a second. It's not the only game in town, and clearly you loved the profession. Hearing a little bit of your story and the SWAT and tactical background, and the passion you had for the profession, it wasn't easy to make the call that it was time early in your career, right? Like, you probably went through a time in your career where this is it forever, right? When you finally hit that point, kind of talk to me about that. What was that like? And then I think now is a good time to have the retirement conversation, because we always get wrapped around that here.
Okay. I didn't grow up wanting to be a law enforcement officer. I wanted to be a baseball player. That didn't work out. So I think a lot of people in our profession have that same route, right? I mean, athletes, and then it didn't work out, so then we became law enforcement officers. In my very initial hiring, I said, I'll give it 5 years and I'll reevaluate. Next time I thought about it, I had 11 on. And I thought the same thing a lot of people think. I'm stuck. This is all I know. And, in some respects, maybe that's true. And in some respects, it's not. There was a time when I wasn't nonchalant about the job, but I didn't need to work overtime. I was young and single and whatever, and I just worked and I liked it. And it was a different time than it is now. Then there was a time when I was into it 24 hours a day, and that's a little dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little dangerous to get into the 24-hour a day hair on fire, nothing, everything is about your job, because I was there, you know, and I probably went through some burnout with that, accompanied by weird stuff that went on in the department that I didn't agree with. And, that the thing that everybody goes through, you go through those waves and you're up and down, and sometimes it's great and sometimes it sucks, and you ride it out, and it's a long career, et cetera, et cetera. So, as far as, retirement goes, to be quite honest, you get to be, I made a decision a long time ago. I wasn't going to get into supervision. I was going to be, I came here to be a cop, and that's what I was going to be. That's my decision. Was it a good decision? And maybe it wasn't, maybe it was, I don't know. I could have been, a 15-star general by now, probably in the sheriff's office, but I'm not, right? I don't have any regrets about that, but when you get to a certain age and you're working patrol, you're not going to have a lot of options, because people are, oh, he could retire at any moment, or, and that's reality. They want to say that's unfair. Well, that's, when you're 55 years old and you're trying to get into some specialty unit, they're not going to let you in because they are afraid you're going to pull the plug at any moment. So, and that's just reality. So, I went through a little bit of that, and then I got to a point where, I was kind of in a rut. And I could have used a change. My goal was to work 35 years. And I could have used a change, but there just wasn't a lot out there. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. And you can't really blame anybody. And I went through a time where, especially when the virus hit, that I'm like, I don't need this. I'm 55 years old. I'm on the straight part of the hockey stick. I'm not going to go, roll around coronavirus victims, because that's what we do, right? I mean, there's all kinds of stuff out there. They want to change everything, and they want you to be safe, and they're concerned about your safety. But then we got a job to do, and it's business as usual, and there's no change in it. So is that frustrating? It is. I made some suggestions, because when I was on the SWAT team took care of everything that nobody else wanted to take care of. And then that's kind of changed too a little bit. So we had ways of attacking this virus thing, and that were different from the way we do it, that are safer as far as I'm concerned. We have people out there in the department who can use PPE to level A, take their own environment into an environment and not have to worry about it. But God, people would have to make some sacrifices then. And so it got a little frustrating. So I was a little frustrated, and I was about ready to quit then. I got through that. And then, the protests started, and I just things changed drastically overnight. I mean, we went from being first line respected people out there during this corona thing to overnight being the devil. So as far as mindset goes, and my biggest regret is leaving the guys out there on my squad that have 5 years on, or 10 years, because they didn't have the same options I had. I could get out of it, financially be okay. Did I want to? No, but I did. But I regret leaving them kind of in a lurch, and I regret, telling my wife, hey, I'm quitting today. It wasn't the greatest thing in the whole world. Do I regret it? No, not a bit. Not a bit. I just think that things have changed. Maybe I've become antiquated or whatever, but I just it was time for me to go. And I would have done it a little smoother and over a little bit more time, but it was what it was. So things changed drastically, and and it was just hard to take. I felt like I wasn't I didn't believe in what we were doing anymore.
So let me ask you, because you're not alone in this. I've had offline conversations probably 3 days a week with somebody around the country facing very similar things and struggling. And they range from, a couple of years on the job to a career 20 plus. And so as you're experiencing that, and you said, if you had it to do over again, you would have planned it out a little bit better, if I heard you correctly in there. It wasn't ideal the way it happened, right? what advice would you give to those that are, sitting on the fence right now, and that officer out there who is in their 13th year? And Shawn, this is for you as much as Jeff, because how many years do you have on, Shawn?
23.
20. So you are retirement eligible right now? Is that no? Okay. The okay, well, we'll leave that one alone then. So for the two of you, what advice would you give that 13-year officer who is, or the 20-year officer who's not eligible, looking at this? What would you tell them? Again, folks, these are ambush questions. I know they are, but we only bring on the best people to answer these questions. And these two, phenomenal in this job, and they've been at it for a minute. I'm curious. I want to know, what advice would you give me if I was in that position right now?
Well, it's a tough call. I mean, I'm being insured by Shawn now, right? So, our circumstances are that we're both in law enforcement, and she's a couple years away from retirement. So, and it's not like that's where the bad planning came in, I guess. But we're lucky because we have that option. If you're a person insuring your family and you've got 15 years on and you're 45 years old, I mean, you almost feel like you're stuck a little bit. So I don't know if I have any good advice for that. My hope is that things stabilize and I hate that new, what do they call it? The new reality, or the
new normal?
Yeah, the new normal. I hate that term completely, but it's reality. It happens, and things change. The one thing you can count on is things change, right? So, I don't really know how to address that for a poor person who has got 20 years on and is 45 years old and is 8 years away from being able to take a full retirement. I mean, we're all sort of in that boat nowadays as far as insurance goes, so we're all hoping that maybe, our legislature, comes up with some sort of insurance plan that we can all live with, or, because it's a hard life. 32 years of law enforcement, what's that equate to? About 55 years of everything else. So, did I cut years off my life? I think so. I've done 1,200 entries on a SWAT team, and lived through that. So, there's just, it's a hard profession. The lay people out there that are making all these new rules for us don't have any idea what they're talking about. You defund the police department, any police department, and you're looking at 10 times the chaos you already have. So, and that's all I'm going to say about that. So, it's just, I don't understand where some of the decisions are coming from nowadays. There's a lot of smart people out there that are saying the same thing. Your Congressman Reicherts and your pretty much any small town, red state prosecutor. And, our problem is we let everybody do what they want to do all the time. So, and I don't understand how you can ever, it's hard to come back from that.
It is. So, and this is definitely an interesting time as we look at the options available to police officers and what's being experienced. And speaking of that, so 2 questions. Karen asked, how do you feel, Jeff, right now? Shawn being on the job still, dealing with everything day to day, though she has, is it Seamus? Is that how you say his name?
Seamus, yeah.
Seamus, yeah. By the way, folks, Shawn is a dog handler, and when you go on first responder conferences or you see her around, plenty of pictures of Seamus on there with her. But for not just her, but all officers still on the job, where's your mind at as far as what the future holds? What do you think? What's your concerns right now?
Well, take care of yourself and take care of your partners.
I love that. Boom. I mean, that's pretty solid advice. And I think remembering our why we're in this business, what got us here to begin with, and taking care of what's to our left and right. Because at the end of the day, most of us that, my background's military, but I think we're so akin to one another that it really is about who's to your left and right most of the time. And having a lot of line riot experience, the both of you and the situations you've been in, I think you know that as well as anybody, that it is about the left and right at various times. Shawn, what advice would you give?
For somebody that's 13 years in, is that where we're going back to? Keep your doors open.
Go on. Yeah.
Don't stop learning different skill sets. I think that's, I've always told Jeff that I try to keep my doors open. And for me, I just love learning as much as I can. I don't ever want to feel like I have to do this job because that's all I know. I want to believe that I have enough education and skills that if I wanted to leave, that I would be able to leave. But not until I find insurance. But yeah, I would just say keep your doors open, because so many people just get sucked into this job and they're like, okay, well, I'm going to do 30 years and I'm out. And I think that's a shitty way, to enjoy life. I think that you really need to find things that you're passionate in. And I think that's one thing that really gravitates me going back to the conferences is I don't do it because I have to do it. I do it because I want to do it and it makes me happy. And even though it's a lot of hard work, I get satisfaction out of, I got into this job to help people. And again, not realizing that I would be helping a lot of my own people. But that gives me a lot of satisfaction because, like I said, there's a lot of first responders out there that are suffering in silence. And we need to provide, as many resources as we can for those people because it is a long, hard profession. And you just, like I said, keep your mind open.
But it's a long, hard profession, but it is one that is so honorable. And those that do it, there's a tremendous amount of pride and passion and dignity in being a law enforcement professional. And right now, across the board, whether you are at 5 years or 35 years, you're feeling it. You're feeling the beat down day in and day out. And I think, some of the things you guys have said along the way, and as always happens, we are just a few minutes from 6 o'clock. The clock runs out on us rather quick on this 1 hour show because I feel like I could talk to you guys about this all night. What I've heard from you tonight, collectively, Jeff, some of the things you said tonight about being courageous enough and committed enough to yourself to be willing to ask for help because though you didn't say it, I'm going to put words in your mouth here and I hope it's okay. You're worth it. At the end of the day, your life, your career, your family is worth it. And taking accountability for that and ownership is something that if you're going to be proud of something in your life, that should be it. And I kind of picked that up from you, that it's worth it. At the end of the day, taking care of you is worth it, regardless of the cost. The other things that we always kind of talk about, typically it's towards the end of the show, but you guys brought it to me, right at the very beginning, is the agency has a responsibility here. And for the leaders out there, whether you are an executive level leader, a chief, a senior administrator, or you're a sergeant out there trying to make a difference, get it right. Get the insurance right, get the FMLA figured out, get the policies down because your officers deserve it. And I picked up on that from you. I also picked up on the need for those candorous communications, whether it is at one of your conferences or it is in the day-to-day in the hallway. Both of you kind of mentioned it in different ways tonight. Figure out how it is you're going to ask if people are okay, and then be willing to listen to their story because telling those stories makes a difference and it makes changes. As we kind of got to this point about where we need to go next, and what your advice to other officers would be, if I heard you correctly. It is a figure out your why, stick to your why, because this profession deserves you. And regardless of what the community thinks, I will tell you, and right now I'll save it for another conversation, I'm doing a lot of research on this, and folks, you're trusted. Regardless of what the media is telling you, regardless of how much of a beatdown you're getting, America trusts law enforcement, and they love you. And though it's hard to remember that sometimes when you're getting stuff literally thrown at you, you are a cared for and appreciated profession. But I got that from it. The biggest piece I got out of this is you're not stopping. First responder conferences it did get hit pretty hard by COVID. You had to put the brakes on for a minute, figure out things all around you. But regardless of the 40 plus hours a week and everything you're currently putting in, Shawn, and everything you got going on, Jeff, you're not stopping. First responder conferences is going to continue the mission, and you're going to reach out in these 1 hour seminars, right?
Yep.
Awesome. And with that, you have us as an ally at Blue Help. Anything we can do to promote your conferences and to help be your voice, we're in it with you. You guys are doing phenomenal, and we respect the work you're doing. So with that, I want to say sincerely very much thank you to everybody who is with us tonight. We love you. We love everything you're doing out there. This is an honorable profession, and you are very much loved and appreciated. Don't give up. And if you are at the point where you can give up, not give up, but sorry, because I gave up too.
Don't give up. Don't give up.
Don't give up in that way. If it is time for you to punch out and to find something else, congratulations. Go do great things. But if you're still in the fight and you stay there, right? So with that, I want to turn it back over to you. Here at Blue Help, we are very much committed to the I Will Listen campaign. And I want to reaffirm to everybody once again, my name is Joe Willis in San Diego, California, and I will listen. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Back to you, Jeff and Shawn.
So we just want to say the same thing, that, we're Jeff and Shawn, first responder conferences, and we will listen. And if you need help, please reach out. I love our partnership with Blue Help. Karen and I hit it off really well when we first met, and we call each other all the time. And I mean, I probably call her more than she calls me, but I always say, hey, do you have a resource here or there? And so, just remember that if you're in need of a resource, I mean, we have a lot of vetted resources. And I mean, you had mentioned Rich before, and transformations. And I mean, there's so many great, places out there. I mean, different resources, and you have to find, and not just, programs, but you have to find what works for you. And that's exactly what we, try to tell people, is just find what works. So.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Jeff, any parting words?
No, just thank you for having us. And like Shawn says, if you need to make a call, make a call. Call us. We'll point you in the right direction.
Awesome. Karen says she loves you guys, and it's a mutual thing here at Blue Help. We absolutely do. For Chris, I'm going to guess Yosemite Sam. He asked what cartoon character I remind you guys of. I'll probably draw a hat up here and some pistols. I don't know. But if you got any guesses, feel free to share them here. Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.